On March 28, 2025, the earth trembled beneath Myanmar. A powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake ripped through the heart of the nation, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. From the bustling streets of Mandalay, the country's second-largest city, to the quiet villages nestled in the countryside, the tremors were felt with terrifying force. Buildings swayed, walls crumbled, and the ground seemed to open up, swallowing homes and livelihoods in an instant. The earthquake, centered near Mandalay, sent shockwaves that rippled across Southeast Asia, even causing casualties in neighboring Thailand. In the immediate aftermath, a cloud of dust and debris hung heavy in the air, a grim testament to the scale of the disaster that had just unfolded. The earthquake struck at the heart of Myanmar, a nation already grappling with political turmoil and internal conflict. The timing couldn't have been worse, as the country was already on edge, its people divided and its resources stretched thin. The earthquake felt like a cruel blow, a reminder of the fragility of life and the capricious nature of fate. In the blink of an eye, thousands lay dead or injured, their families left to grieve amidst the ruins. The earthquake had shaken Myanmar to its core, leaving behind a landscape scarred by destruction and a people struggling to comprehend the enormity of their loss. As the dust began to settle, the true scale of the disaster became horrifyingly clear. The earthquake had claimed thousands of lives, with the death toll expected to rise as rescue workers continued to search for survivors trapped beneath the rubble. Hospitals, already ill-equipped to deal with everyday emergencies, were overwhelmed with the influx of injured, their corridors filled with the cries of the wounded and the anguished sobs of their loved ones. The earthquake had not discriminated in its destructive path, leaving a trail of suffering that cut across all walks of life. From the bustling city centers to the remote villages, the earthquake had left its mark, a stark reminder of the raw power of nature and the vulnerability of human existence. The Myanmar earthquake was a tragedy of immense proportions, a stark illustration of the destructive force of nature and the human cost of such disasters. The world watched in horror as images of the devastation emerged: collapsed buildings, shattered lives, and a nation grappling with unimaginable loss. But amidst the tragedy, stories of resilience and hope also began to surface. Ordinary citizens, thrust into extraordinary circumstances, displayed remarkable courage and compassion, digging through the rubble with their bare hands to rescue their neighbors. International aid organizations and foreign governments pledged their support, sending much-needed supplies and personnel to assist in the relief efforts. In the wake of the devastating earthquake, a frantic race against time began. Rescue workers, both local and international, poured into the affected areas, their determination fueled by a desperate hope of finding survivors trapped beneath the rubble. Each passing hour brought with it the grim realization that the chances of finding survivors were dwindling. Yet the rescuers pressed on, their efforts a testament to the indomitable human spirit in the face of adversity. Sniffer dogs, trained to detect the faintest scent of life, scoured the debris fields, their every bark raising hopes that were often dashed as the rescue teams dug deeper into the wreckage. Adding to the complexity of the situation were the wildly disparate casualty figures reported by various sources. While official government figures placed the death toll in the low thousands, international organizations and news agencies reported significantly higher numbers, with some estimates exceeding 10,000. The discrepancies highlighted the challenges of gathering accurate information in the chaotic aftermath of such a disaster, particularly in a country like Myanmar, where government control over information flow is notoriously tight. The lack of reliable data hampered relief efforts, making it difficult for aid organizations to assess the true scale of the disaster and allocate resources effectively. Compounding the tragedy was the fact that many of the hardest-hit areas were located in remote, difficult-to-reach regions. Landslides triggered by the earthquake had blocked roads and cut off access to entire villages, making it nearly impossible for aid to reach those in desperate need. The Myanmar government, already struggling to cope with the scale of the disaster, faced mounting criticism for its slow and inadequate response. Accusations of corruption, inefficiency, and a lack of transparency plagued the relief efforts, further eroding public trust in the government's ability to handle the crisis. Amidst the chaos and confusion, stories of extraordinary courage and resilience emerged. ordinary citizens transformed into unlikely heroes by circumstance risked their own lives to pull their neighbors from the rubble. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, often without basic medical supplies, to tend to the injured. Volunteers from across the country flocked to the affected areas, offering whatever help they could, from distributing food and water to providing emotional support to those who had lost everything. The earthquake's destructive fury did not spare Myanmar's rich cultural heritage. Ancient temples, some dating back centuries, crumbled into ruin, their once imposing structures reduced to piles of rubble. The iconic Ava Bridge, a symbol of Myanmar's colonial past, lay partially submerged in the Irrawaddy River, its iron girders twisted and broken like matchsticks. The earthquake had dealt a devastating blow to the country's cultural identity, erasing in an instant irreplaceable treasures that had withstood the test of time for generations. The loss of these cultural landmarks was felt deeply by the people of Myanmar, who saw in them a reflection of their history, their traditions, and their enduring spirit. The earthquake's impact on Myanmar's infrastructure was equally devastating. Roads were ripped apart, bridges collapsed, and airports were forced to close, crippling transportation networks and hampering relief efforts. Power outages plunged entire cities into darkness, while the disruption of communication lines left families frantically trying to connect with loved ones in the affected areas. Hospitals, already operating with limited resources, were overwhelmed with the influx of injured, their capacity to provide even basic medical care stretched to the breaking point. The earthquake had exposed the fragility of Myanmar's infrastructure, highlighting the urgent need for investment in disaster preparedness and resilience. Beyond the immediate physical damage, the earthquake had a profound psychological impact on the people of Myanmar. The trauma of the event, coupled with the loss of loved ones, homes and livelihoods, left many in a state of shock and despair. The uncertainty of the future, compounded by the ongoing political turmoil and the looming threat of aftershocks, created a pervasive sense of anxiety and fear. The earthquake had shaken not just the physical foundations of Myanmar, but also the emotional and psychological well-being of its people. The earthquake's devastation served as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of human societies to natural disasters. It highlighted the importance of investing in disaster preparedness, strengthening infrastructure, and building resilient communities. In the face of such calamities, international cooperation and solidarity become paramount. The outpouring of support from around the world in the wake of the Myanmar earthquake was a testament to the shared humanity that binds us together in times of crisis. As the initial shock of the earthquake subsided, a spirit of resilience and determination began to emerge from the ruins. Across the affected areas, ordinary citizens, their own lives shattered by the disaster, displayed extraordinary courage and compassion. Neighbors helped neighbors, sharing what little food, water, and shelter they had left. Volunteers, many of them young people, flocked to the hardest-hit areas, putting their own lives on hold to assist in the relief efforts. In the face of unimaginable loss and suffering, the people of Myanmar demonstrated the strength of the human spirit, their capacity for empathy and selflessness shining through the darkness. The international community responded to the disaster with an outpouring of support. Aid organizations, both large and small, mobilized their resources, sending medical teams, emergency supplies, and financial aid. Foreign governments pledged their support, offering search and rescue teams logistical assistance and financial contributions. The United Nations launched a flash appeal for humanitarian aid, calling for $100 million to provide essential assistance to those affected by the earthquake. The response, while heartening, highlighted the enormity of the challenges ahead. The earthquake in Myanmar served as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our world and the shared responsibility we have to help those in need. The outpouring of support from around the globe was a testament to the bonds of humanity that transcend borders and cultures. Yet, the disaster also exposed the limitations of international aid and the challenges of delivering assistance in a timely and effective manner, particularly in countries like Myanmar, where political instability, conflict, and logistical constraints complicate relief efforts. In the aftermath of the Myanmar earthquake, the road to recovery promised to be long and arduous. Rebuilding shattered lives, restoring devastated communities, and healing the psychological scars left by the disaster would require sustained effort both domestically and internationally. The earthquake had exposed the fragility of human existence, but it had also revealed the resilience of the human spirit and the power of collective action in the face of adversity. As the people of Myanmar began the long and difficult task of rebuilding their lives and their nation, the world watched with a mixture of sorrow and hope, inspired by their courage and determined to offer continued support on their journey toward recovery.